mortgage deductions.
Is this true? We go right to the source. Republican Congressman Jeb Hensarling, who is on that commission. Congressman, great to see you. So let's start with mortgage interest deduction. This is something that a lot of households in America depend on, that the housing industry claims they depend on. Is there a real chance we may see the end of that because of the commission's report?
Well, let me paraphrase something Mark Twain once said. I'm gratified I could answer so quickly and so confidently and say, I don't know. I would say there are all kinds of negotiations that are taking place at the moment between all the panel members. Hopefully, although I approach this with high hopes and low expectations, I don't think this particular commission was necessarily designed with success in mind. There's a whole host of what they call tax expenditures that a number of members want to look at. Personally, I came here to represent the interest of the taxpayer, and I think fundamentally we are not undertaxed, but instead Washington is overspending, and that's why government, over the course of the next generation, is due to double in size.
But then if that's true, why have we not heard yet from the Commission about things like slashing Social Security and Medicare expenditures? And will we, before this report is made final and complete, will we see you guys at least recommend some type of cut on these levels?
Well, one, when you say cut, you don't have to cut anything. What you have to do is ensure they don't grow at multiples over the economy that will bankrupt the next generation. So I think it's important to get the language right, but ultimately you are correct in this sense. Unless you deal with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, unless we have an adult conversation about it, unless we have a bipartisan solution, the next generation is going to be condemned to a lower standard of living. The facts are inescapable. These programs that gave comfort to our parents and our grandparents are going to prove to bankrupt our children and grandchildren unless they're reformed. So ultimately, if the Commission decides to punt on dealing with entitlement spending, I fear it has failed in its core mission.
All right, so according to what has happened so far, it has failed because it hasn't dealt with specifics about how to cut back on those very things that you just mentioned.
Well, again, I don't think this thing was particularly designed for success, given that two-thirds of the appointees are either Democrats or appointed by the president. The report is not due until December 1, and I will give our co-chairman, Erskine Bowles, and Senator Alan Simpson credit so far in trying to make sure
Erskine Bowles, we should mention a Democrat, Alan Simpson, a retired Republican. Go ahead.
Well, and again, as I said, I have high hopes, low expectations, but if you care passionately as I do, not just as a congressman, but as the father of an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old, I don't want to leave my children in America with less freedom, fewer opportunities, and so I hope it succeeds, but I just fear in some respects the president hasn't figured out whether he wants to solve the debt crisis or whether he wants to exploit it. And so, you know, the atmosphere is a little toxic, and somehow the 18 members of this commission are going to have to try to fight through that. And again, a report is due on December 1, and we'll have to see what happens.
Representative, I want to go back to something that you said before, where you said we don't necessarily have to cut Medicare or Social Security. We just need to stop the growth of it because it'll eventually bankrupt us. Some people feel that that's really where we're already very close. And so therefore, why wouldn't you then really do the tough love? And is it something, I mean, speak honestly here, because we know that the Republicans are saying if we got in place, we would really take this into our own hands. Would they really? Because it would be extraordinarily unpopular to tell an elderly person in their constituency, say, guess what? Some of what you love about Medicare is going away.
Well, number one, I haven't seen any legislation on the table that impacts any senior. Let me say that again. I haven't seen any legislation on the table that impacts any senior. All the legislation I see deals with people who are 55 and below. I mean, clearly those who are seniors, those who are soon to be retired, who've counted on the old system, ought to be able to continue to work under the old system. But again, the old system will bankrupt future generations. And so it's our challenge to figure out how to get good quality health care and retirement security at a better cost. And so legislation, for example, that I've co-sponsored, the Roadmap for America, authored by Paul Ryan of Wisconsin, benefits continue to grow, but it grows at a slower rate than current law, and it took a couple of generations to get into this problem. It'll probably take a couple of generations to get out, but we have to start today. And right now, you're right, we are at a tipping point. Already we have a debt-to-economy ratio of 93%, and by historic standards, we could lose economic growth. History shows us that's what happens to countries that have this level of debt. And so I'm hopeful that the President will get serious about this. I'm hopeful that other Democratic members of the Commission will join and try to do something so that we don't engage in generational theft.
All right, but it's not going to happen now, and it doesn't sound like it's going to happen after December 1st. Anyway, Representative Jeb Hensarling, Republican.